The first emperor's final journey began in the 10th month of 211 BCE, when he set out on a grand tour of his eastern territories. For years he had been haunted by dreams of death and obsessed with finding the elixir of immortality. He sent scholars to distant islands, dug deep into mountains, and trusted charlatans who promised him eternal life. But all his efforts were in vain. By the 7th month of 210 BCE, after months of travel, the emperor fell gravely ill. His body, weakened by fever and exhaustion, he knew his end was near. For the first time in his life, the man who had conquered all enemies and controlled all lands could not control his own mortality. He was carried to a remote palace in Sandhill, a small outpost in what is now Guangdong County, Hebei Province, far from the safety and power of Xianyang, the Qing capital. There, in the quiet of the northern plains, the emperor made his final fateful decision. On his deathbed, Huang wrote a secret edict addressed to his eldest son, Prince Fusu. The edict was clear and direct. Fusu was to return to Xianyang immediately, take command of the imperial army, and oversee the emperor's funeral. In ancient China, this order was not just a request, it was an official declaration of succession. Fusu was the rightful heir to the Qin throne. He was wise, compassionate, and respected by the court and the military alike. Unlike his father, Fusu opposed the harshest of Qin's legalist policies, and had spoken out against the emperor's crackdown on scholars and harsh punishments. For that he had been exiled to the northern border to supervise the construction of the Great Wall, alongside General Meng Tian, the most powerful military commander in the empire. But even in exile, Fusu remained the clear choice to rule. The emperor knew this, and in his last moments he chose stability and legacy over the whims of his younger, weaker sons. The edict was sealed with the imperial jade seal and given to Zhao, the chief eunuch of the imperial palace and the man in charge of the emperor's personal documents. Zhao was a low-born man who had risen to power through cunning and loyalty to the emperor. He was intelligent, ruthless, and deeply ambitious. He had long served as the tutor of Huang, the emperor's 18th and youngest son, a spoiled, ignorant boy who cared only for pleasure and had no talent for governance. When Zhao received the emperor's final edict, he saw an opportunity that would change his life forever. If Fusu became emperor, Zhao would lose all his power. Fusu trusted General Meng Tian, and Meng Tian hated Zhao. Zhao knew that under Fusu's reign he would be stripped of his position, cast aside, or even executed. But if Huang became emperor, Zhao would be the most powerful man in the empire, the puppet master, pulling the strings of a weak, obedient ruler. So Zhao made a choice that would damn the Qin Empire. He hid the edict, he did not send it to Fusu. He did not tell anyone of the emperor's final wish. Instead, he waited for the emperor to die. On a hot, quiet night in Sandhill, Huang took his last breath. The man who had unified China was dead at the age of 49. And with his death, the empire he built began to crumble. Zhao immediately went to Huang and laid out his plan. He told the young prince that the empire was now up for grabs, that Fusu would become emperor and kill him, and that the only way to survive was to seize the throne. Huang, weak and greedy, did not hesitate. He agreed to the conspiracy. But Zhao knew one man stood in their way, Li Si, the prime minister of Qin. Li Si was the most powerful official in the empire after the emperor. A brilliant legalist scholar, he had helped Huang unify China, draft his laws, and build his government. He was a man of great talent and even greater fear. Li Si had climbed from poverty to the highest office in the land, and he was terrified of losing everything he had built. He knew that if Fusu became emperor, Fusu would turn to Meng Tian and other conservative nobles, and Li Si would be pushed out of power. His family, his wealth, his legacy, all would be gone. Zhao used this fear to manipulate Li Si. He met with the prime minister in secret and laid bare the stakes. He told Li Si that Fusu hated his legalist policies, that Meng Tian was a greater military leader and would replace him, and that only Huang would keep Li Si in power. Li Si struggled with the decision. He was loyal to the emperor, and he knew the edict was real. He knew Fusu was the rightful heir. But his fear of ruin was stronger than his loyalty. After days of agonizing, Li Si made the worst mistake of his life. He joined the conspiracy. Together, Zhao and Li Si committed an act of unprecedented treachery. They forged a new imperial edict, using the dead emperor's seal to make it look official. The fake edict accused Fusu of being unfilial and Meng Tian of treason. It ordered both men to commit suicide immediately. They sealed the fake edict and sent it to the northern border with a trusted messenger. Then they covered up the emperor's death. They preserved his body with fish and salt to hide the smell of decay, and they continued the imperial procession as if the emperor was still alive, eating and receiving petitions as usual. No one in the entourage knew the truth. The man who had ruled them with an iron fist was dead, and 2 traitors were now in control of the empire. When the fake edict arrived at the northern camp, Fu Su read it and broke down in tears. He was a man of deep filial piety, and he believed the edict was his father's final wish. General Meng Tian tried to stop him, telling him that the edict was a fake, that the emperor was on tour, and could not have sent such an order, that he should return to Xianyang to verify the truth. But Fu Su refused. He said, "If a father orders his son to die, how can I question it?" He drew his sword and killed himself. Meng Tian refused to commit suicide, believing he could prove his innocence. But he was arrested and imprisoned, and later forced to take poison. With Fu Su and Meng Tian dead, the last obstacles to Hu Hai's reign were gone. When the imperial procession finally returned to Xianyang, Zhao Gao and Li Si announced the emperor's death and placed Hu Hai on the throne as the second emperor of Qin. The people of Qin and the court officials had no idea what had happened. They believed the succession was legitimate. But the empire was now in the hands of a tyrant and a puppet master. Hu Hai was a cruel, incompetent ruler. He listened only to Zhao Gao, who began to eliminate all his enemies. He killed the emperor's other sons and daughters, purged loyal officials, and increased the already harsh taxes and labor demands of the Qin people. Li Si soon realized he had made a terrible mistake. He tried to oppose Zhao Gao, but it was too late. Zhao Gao framed Li Si for treason, and in 208 BC Li Si was executed in the most brutal way possible, cut in half at the waist, his entire family exterminated. The man who had helped build the Qin Empire was destroyed by the very conspiracy he had joined. With Li Si dead, Zhao Gao became the sole ruler of Qin. He even dared to test the loyalty of the court by presenting a deer to the second emperor and calling it a horse. Those who said it was a deer were killed. This is the origin of the famous Chinese idiom, calling a deer a horse, meaning to distort the truth for power. The Qin Empire descended into chaos. The people, crushed by endless labor and cruel punishments, rose up in rebellion. Peasants, soldiers, and former nobles all took up arms against the Qin court. In 207 BCE, only 3 years after the Sandhill coup, the Qin dynasty collapsed. Hu Hai was killed by Zhao Gao, and Zhao Gao himself was killed by the new ruler. The empire that had taken centuries to build was destroyed in just a few years, all because of a single betrayal in a desolate palace at Sandhill. The Sandhill coup is one of the most important events in Chinese history. It was not a rebellion of the people or a defeat in war. It was a betrayal from within, a choice made by 2 powerful men who put their own greed and fear above the fate of an empire. Qin Shi Huang spent his life building a unified eternal empire, but his death left a power vacuum that was exploited by the worst kinds of men. Fu Su, the rightful heir who might have softened Qin's harsh laws and saved the dynasty, was dead. Meng Tian, the great general who could have crushed the rebellions, was dead. Li Si, the brilliant statesman, was dead. And Zhao Gao, the scheming eunuch, destroyed everything in his quest for power. This story teaches us a timeless lesson: power without morality is a curse. A kingdom built on fear and force cannot survive if those in charge are corrupt and selfish. The Qin dynasty was the first unified Chinese empire, and its fall showed the world that even the greatest empires can crumble if they lose their way. The Sandhill coup is not just a chapter in ancient history, it is a warning about the dangers of ambition, betrayal, and the corrupting nature of absolute power. It is a story of what happens when men choose their own interests over the good of the people they are supposed to serve. If you enjoyed this journey into ancient China, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe for more epic history. See you next time.